The trillions of dollars that the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Qataris have spent on American weapons over the past couple of decades. The Israelis just fly right over their airspace and they can't do anything about it. And then the American bases that are all across the Persian Gulf region don't do anything about it. So all those resources went to waste. Trillions of dollars have gone to waste into the pockets of Western businessmen and Western governments for nothing, just to strengthen the United States, just to strengthen the Israeli regime, and to no effect. They flew right over Saudi Arabia. Not one plane or two planes, large numbers. Nothing.
You know, this is one of those moments that should make us stop and think. Decades of military spending, trillions of dollars, and yet when it really matters, it amounts to nothing. This isn't just about wasted money, it's about false assurances that have left entire nations exposed. History shows us that over reliance on foreign powers for security almost always ends badly. Think of the Shah's Iran in the 1970s or the fall of South Vietnam. When the push comes to shove, you realize you're on your own. That's what we're seeing play out here.
It wasn't as if Netanyahu said, no, we will strike like 6 months after or 3 months after Trump said it will not happen again. He said it literally hours later. It's a slap in the face to Trump. Yet this Trump, instead of responding to the Israelis and saying, no, I said this will not happen again and will not happen again, we see him dancing in the stadium hours after Charlie Kirk dies. And, when the reporter said, how are you holding up? He said, and he said, look at building a fantastic ballroom. And this is the state of the United States. He's reflective and this harms the United States. This weakens the United States even further. So it's all bad news. We've been saying this for 2 years now, that the Israeli regime and its genocide is destroying the collective West. It is destroying the empire. But it is just picking up speed as time goes by. It's like, it's now going all downhill.
That image really hits home. A snowball rolling downhill, gathering speed. Once public opinion starts shifting against a war or a policy, history tells us it becomes nearly impossible to reverse. The Vietnam War showed us that once the tide turned domestically, it was only a matter of time before Washington had to change course.
It's like um, it's just picking up speed, especially after we saw the images of the starving kids and the starving Palestinians. We saw this rapid shift in the mood, especially in the West, and now it's what's happened with Iran and then what happened with Qatar. It's only it's just moving down more rapidly, but it's even impacting U.S. internal politics, as I said earlier. Now, Charlie Kirk, regardless of who carried it out, people are saying maybe the Israeli regime did it. Maybe it was because he was shifting. He was their last uh, major public figure uh, who could hold back the tide, at least among a segment of U.S. society. And he was shifting, we now know. And that created, because of the outrageous behavior of the Israeli regime and the U.S. government, people are saying maybe it was them. Probably it was them. It was definitely them, say some. Again, I have no idea. But the point is that it is weakening the foundations of the political regime in the United States.
This is such a critical point. Great powers usually don't collapse from the outside, they corrode from within. Rome didn't fall in a day, it crumbled because of internal division and overreach. We're seeing echoes of that right now.
As we know now, or as we knew before, but as everyone knows now, Hamas is in Qatar because the United States wanted them to be there. The Israeli regime wanted them to be there. Qatar's wealth goes to the West. And even during the World Cup, when they were building hotels stadiums and infrastructure and a metro which is now empty. Uh, the those who carried out the construction companies and those who were developing all of these, they were linked to powerful people in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives, making huge billions of dollars just for the world during the World Cup, so that the Qataris could have U.S. protection. So they gave them a base. They pay for U.S. expenses in the base, in the Al Udeid base. They're constantly funding the West. All of their wealth, their wealth fund is more or less spent in ways in which please the United States, but yet they are still bombed. So when this happens, then people think, things like this. They see the death of Charlie Kirk as being suspicious in the sense that it could quite possibly, especially since the story provided by the FBI is so full of holes, that people are suspicious about the role of the Israeli regime.
And this is the danger. Once trust in official narratives collapses, everything becomes suspect. Whether these suspicions are valid or not, they deepen the divide at home and make governance far more unstable.
Now, I have no idea personally about what happened, but the point is that the regime has become despised across the world. And so this rhetoric or this language, the statements coming out of the summit the gathering of Arab leaders and Muslim leaders, this I think has to be, we have to, it is, if you look at it in a, in the vacuum, it's disappointing. And I wasn't expecting anything more than this, by the way. But when you look at it within the context of this broader shift that's taking place across the world, this is not good news for the Israeli regime. In fact, as I said, I believe that a lot of the problems that now exist inside the United States, the divisions that we see, are linked to the Israeli regime, not just because of the 2 years of genocide and how the United States fully supports it. And the US Secretary of State goes to Palestine at a time when this new wave of terror is taking place in Gaza and fully supporting it. Not just that, but the fact that the regime is literally out of control, waging wars, getting the United States involved in their foreign wars, something that Charlie Kirk had a problem with. He didn't want the U.S. to get involved in the conflict with Iran, between the war that the Israeli regime engaged with Iran. So we're seeing now that not only is the Israeli regime isolating the United States and the West internationally, but it's causing big problems at home for the Zionist elites in the United States and in the broader West. So I think this is just another brick in this wall. It is that's isolating the Israeli regime. And so while I'm sure that people are disappointed and they do see these countries as really betraying the Palestinian cause, the Turks should have ended, Erdogan should have ended the relationship. Morocco should have done the same. Egypt should have done the same. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates, they should have all just cut off ties. Bahrain, but the shift in language is notable, and I think it's reflective of the fact that these countries, these governments, feel the need to uh, be more harsh. And when you put all that together with what's happening elsewhere and the UN General Assembly, this is not good news for the Israeli regime.
And this is what's fascinating. We are witnessing a slow but undeniable shift in the diplomatic language of entire regions. Even countries that used to be reliably aligned with Washington are hardening their tone. That doesn't happen overnight. It's a reflection of popular pressure building for years.
And by the way, it also strengthens Iran. It strengthens Iran because it shows to Iranians and to the international community that doing a deal with the United States gets you nowhere. What deal could the Iranians possibly do with the Americans to to prevent the United States or the Israeli regime from attacking Iran. Because without a doubt, what happened in Qatar was with U.S. coordination. There's zero doubt about that. It's impossible for the Israeli regime to do it without U.S. Not, without the U.S. being informed well beforehand and giving the green light.
This raises uncomfortable but necessary questions. If true, it means Washington is not just complicit, but actively enabling policies that put its own credibility at risk worldwide. Long term, that's disastrous for American soft power.
We are heading towards more danger, and it could lead to very dramatic changes in the fortunes of people across the world. It's a very dangerous situation. Uh, it the United States is losing. The Israeli regime has lost, but it is very dangerous. But as you pointed out, even though the summit was a disappointment, in my opinion, as you know, it was not unexpected. I expected nothing better than what we saw. However, even the changes in language can also be seen in other subtle changes, like the improved relationship between Iran and Egypt, like the changing of the discourse among countries that makes them more similar to the language of the resistance, the axis of resistance in particular. But also, even Jolani, who from the very beginning, the project was to bring him to power to destroy Syria. That was the US plan all along. Al Qaeda and ISIS, their behavior by nature destroys countries because it creates hatred and division and takfiri ideology it's very similar to Zionism. The Wahhabi and the Salafis, their behavior towards others is very similar to Zionism. So the point was to bring to put a, a, a bomb into Damascus, a hand grenade, and to have everything explode. But even here, you see that he has to take a stance against the Israeli regime, even though until a few days ago he was saying, our enemies are just like yours, Iran and Hezbollah. They were seeking a deal. Even though the Israelis would bomb them, they never fired a single bullet at the regime. But even in that, he has to take a harder position. Everyone has to take a tougher position because people on the streets expect it. And that is another element. The world has turned again, just like in the United States, we see how people are changing. And our region is far worse for the regime. People are outraged, and every day that goes by just makes the anger and outrage greater.
This is a powder keg waiting for a spark. Governments may think they can manage public anger, but history shows that once the street turns against you, things can unravel very fast. Think of the Arab Spring or the fall of Eastern European regimes in the late 80s.
And so the harsher positions taken by these governments reflect that anger because they want to stay in power. These are not popular governments. They're not there by the consent of the people. Their policies do not coincide with the policies that people want to pursue. So they have to take this tougher position so that there's no unrest at home. So even in Syria, the regime has to change, but also other changes will take place because while these these dictatorships, these pro-American dictatorships in the Persian Gulf region will continue to be in the U.S. camp. There's no doubt that they're in private conversations, they're saying to themselves, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to protect ourselves. There will be subtle, very subtle, they're still going to remain in the US camp, but there will be subtle shifts in how they deal with Iran, with Russia, with China, and with the West. There will be subtle changes if they are sane. So I think all of this is bad news for the regime. And this is because Netanyahu is not working in the interests of Zionism. He's working in the interests of Netanyahu. This genocide should have ended long ago. The genocide should have ended long ago. the expanded war against Lebanon. The war against Lebanon should not have happened. The war against Iran. None of this is good for the war against Iran was not good for the Israeli regime, but Netanyahu wants to remain in power. So he is dragging the regime down, and he's dragging the US down with it. He's dragging Europe down too. And this is just going to continue. So every day it's just like it's another brick on the wall that's isolating the regime. So they made the apartheid wall. Now they've helped create a wall surrounding the regime, which isolates it against the rest of the world.
What a powerful image to end on. The wall built to keep others out now serving as a wall of isolation. That's the paradox of overreach. Instead of securing safety, it creates enemies and pushes former allies away. This moment feels like a turning point, not just for Israel, but for the entire Western led order. The question now is whether cooler heads will prevail or whether pride and politics will drag everyone into a much deeper crisis.